Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today, I'm going to go through how my team did in round 5 of Afl Supercoach. Let's get into it. So, as you could see by the thumbnail and the title of the video, I got greedy. I passed up the obvious choice of a Gorn 131 VC, and I took a gamble on Marcus Bontempelli, one that didn't pay off, and it ended up losing me, I think, about 50 points. But despite losing that 50 points, and despite some woeful performances from my Gold Coast Suns players, I think the round went pretty well. We got 2,076, which is a lot lower than I would have hoped going into the round, especially after the first couple games. Ranked in the top 37%, it's all right, but our season rank did drop by another 7k, and we're now out of the top 20% at 23% with a total score of 9,813 and a season rank of 42,000 basically. So let's have a look at how the team did, because there were some moves I did late that I was quite happy with. So starting off in the back line, Jack Sinclair had a disappointing game. He's bound to have that. He's bound to have that basically every 5 or so weeks, but nothing to worry about because the weeks before that were pretty good. Jordan Clark had one of the most perplexing tons I have ever seen, because he looked pretty much nowhere the entire game, and then at some point in the fourth quarter just got 25 points out of nowhere. But I mean, I'll take it. Jai Sarong, 75, another good score. I mean, of course, not the 126 that he got last week, but after the 48 and 54, he's rejigged his cash generation, break even of -37. He'll get up to 350, you'd expect. Sam Grill, it was a bit of an underwhelming score. He started really good early. I think he had like 42 at halftime, but faltered off a little bit. Jacob Farrow is someone who if you saw my trade updates throughout the week, I almost didn't have this guy. And I would have been pulling out my hair, because basically at the last moment, I decided to reverse my basically a Buderick to Steen trade, and then instead trade out Dan Houston to Farrow, which worked extremely well because Farrow ended up outscoring Dan Houston by a tremendous amount. I think he almost doubled his score. Because if we look at what Houston got 55, Farrow got 102. So I really benefited with that trade. And then Josh Lindsay, an 80, very good score. He just had that roll down back. And Michael Selwood with a 74. It surprised me because I didn't think he had this in him, honestly. But you will 100% take this score. He's now back to being a viable cash cow, of course. Once that 28 moves out of his price cycle, he'll be back to generating cash. Lockie Jakes, of course, missed. Then we move on to the midfield. You can see the big yellow banner on Marcus Bontempelli and a big blue banner right below on Max Gawn. Yeah, it's a shame. It's 50 points down the drain, but you live and you learn. Safe to say I'm not going to be passing up any good BC scores anymore. And I'm perplexed as actually to why I did this, because, I mean, they didn't have their ruckman. So it was a Sherry type brain fade from me there. Zach Butters, 145, amazing score from him. He just looked pretty dominant in that Port game where ultimately they lost, but an amazing game from him. Nick Dacos, coming back off an injury. Actually, it was Adelaide, I think they versed. No, it wasn't. It was Fremantle, a very low scoring game. Jeez, that was extremely low scoring. But an underwhelming score. He was pretty much nowhere in the start, and then was looking like he was going to turn up, but eventually wasn't able to get there. The Suns boys, Noah Anderson and Took Miller. These two are what ended up tanking my score this round, because each of them should be getting 110s, And so that's 40 points from each. You add that 80 points up, and I'm basically 2,150. And yeah, I did go early and took Miller. I am regretting it because he was scoring well, and then I get him in and I get a 88 and a 72. But I do think he will still end up being a keeper. I think if we actually look at the two games, Melbourne and Sydney, it was their first two losses. They were pretty bad games for both. And especially at Norwood, no one likes playing at Norwood. I mean, Isaac Heaney likes playing at Norwood, evidently. But I think against Essendon at People's First Stadium, he should go big. Then you've got Giants at People's First. Then you've got back-to-back at, I think, Darwin. You should be expecting good scores from the Suns players there. It's an all right run. And it's back to playing a lot of home games. You look at, there's away. They've got Hawks at UTAS, which is a bit daunting. But I think both Noah Anderson and Touk Miller should be fine. Of course, those who traded out Noah Anderson will be laughing right now because if we look at his selections, there were actually quite a bit. About 2,000 people traded him out. And it's safe to say that did kind of work. Kozzy Pickett, he was looking pretty good for... I'll bring up footy scores because he was clamped by Andy McGrath. And his efficiency, if we look here, 46% efficiency with 11 clangers. But he still managed to get a 94 and 3 frees against. I think this is an amazing score because if you move this down to 6 clangers, move this up to 60%, maybe take 2 frees off, that's a 120 score, I reckon. So I'm happy with what Kozzy scored. And of course, I picked him because he'll be a lot more expensive to get later. Did rise up by about 20K, and I'm happy with that. Someone else I'm happy with, Tanner Bruin, is showing us why he's the highest rated mid-pricer of this group. A 115, we look at his heat map. He was just bouncing up and down with the ball. You see all pretty much throughout the middle here. Of course, I think he's missed out on DPP. Yes, he has. But still, I reckon he's going to be a very, very good scorer. I reckon he'll be able to get up to 450 now, hopefully scoring 100 scores. Because if we boot up Supercoach Projector and we project him scoring about 100s, of course, once this 47 moves out, I think it actually moves out now because his break even's 9. And if we project him going at 100s, which I think we should expect him to average because if you don't have this 47 in there, he's averaging basically 105. He'll get up to basically 500 by his buy, and then he'll be an easy trade out by then to someone who's, of course, had their buy. And then Jagger Smith, the last person on field, the score that, it did end up counting because Jack Lukosius. But it was a disappointing score from Jagger Smith in a pretty hard game. It was torrential rain pretty much the entire weekend, so a lot of these games were rain affected. But I have no doubt that Jagger Smith will be able to bounce back. I know he is averaging basically 80. And at 80s, he'll be able to get to 380K or so. I have faith he'll get there. I'm not really worried about this score, but I will probably stick him on the bench maybe for a week. And then you look at the bench, Braden Cook ended up not trading out. And it was looking like in the first couple of quarters that would be a bad decision because if we look at his quarter splits, they were pretty bad at the start. A 6 and a 12, so he had 18 at halftime, but then 34 in the third quarter. Just, I think basically when Adelaide began to pull away, really just showed how good he is and why he deserves to be in this Adelaide team. And so I reckon I will be holding on with him because 41, it's a high break even, but I reckon he'll be able to clear it. If we project him going basically 75s maybe, which I think he can score, he'll get up to 350. There's a lot of good cash cows this season. Another one of them is Tom Myers, 79. He just seems to be chugging out these scores. Should be going at about 75 average, getting up to that 370 mark. And then Milan Murdoch should hopefully be back this week. Fingers crossed. Then you got the Rucks. Max Gawn had a very good game. I think Essendon tried to tag him with Peter Wright, which meant his score could have been a lot higher. And he also got affected a lot by scaling, I think. If we look at that Bombers Essendon game, congrats Essendon for getting your first win. He got negative 13 scaling. If he got like negative 8 scaling, I probably would have taken the VC score, but that's happened. Luke Jackson, a 125, and I reckon he's sneakily shaping up to be a top 3 ruck. Of course, when Tristan Cherry comes back, I think after this round, if we look at ruck averages, he's currently 4th, quite a bit ways above likes of a Jordan Sweet. Of course, Tim English should be higher, but he's now injured. And you look at total points, he is 3rd behind Gawn and Grundy. And I reckon if you look at the people, if you look at the opponents these 2 rucks have faced, you've got West Coast for Brodie Grundy, whether Jackson has done it. I mean, you had Richmond there. You would have hoped that score would have been higher. But apart from that, it's fairly good opponents. And they've got West Coast coming up. So I reckon, especially given it's the last game of the round, Luke Jackson could be a very handy captaincy score. And also, I reckon, with that break-even of 108, he's projected 130. He could easily push up to 150. So if you want to get him in, this might be one of the last weeks you can, especially given they've got Carlton and a battered Western Bulldogs coming up. Zane Zakostelski didn't play. I think he's going to be a dead rookie. It hurts. But, hey, at least we've got a loophole option now, given Brisbane played quite late in the round. And onto the forward line, Harry Sheezel, 127, right back to his scoring best after that, warring, I think, 97 last round. Yeah, against Carlton. Right back to that 120, mid-120s that we know he can get. Sam Flanders, his break-even's pretty high now. He hasn't really been the pick. There have been a lot of picks that have been better than him, like a Josh Shelley or a Connor McDonald. He was supposed to be that pretty obvious pick, and I know a lot of people have him, but he might not have that much time left in our sides, I reckon. If he can't show that he can pop out a 110 score, he might have to go. He's been looking pretty good, but just not super good. Connor Buderick, I ended up holding on to him, and I'll take the 12K he generated, but with a break-even of 47, it's hard to see me keeping him because he's really only been popping out 70s, and I want a bit better, especially given I have Took Miller and Cosy Pickett to come down. I think the likes of a Buderick and then also a Jack Lukosius could see themselves out of my team by the end of the week. Because Jack Lukosius, he got a 38. It was a pretty poor score, and he was pretty inefficient at the start of the game. If we look at his efficiency, 58. He had 12 touches, 5 marks, a point. And he has the role. He had a pretty decent role along the wing and the half back line. I mean, of course, you can't really see it here because he probably didn't get that many touches. But if we look at his quarter splits, -1 in the first quarter, which really, really hurt. And then 19, 9, and 11 wasn't really able to catch it back up. And so I think he's one I will put on the chopping block. Devin Robinson with an 85. He's good, but he's injured himself, which is not good. And then Todd Marshall with a 48. He was moved actually forward at the end there, which I think it was a bit of a desperate play to try and get some more points for Port. Because, of course, if we look at his heat map, the last quarter, got 1 point. And we look at his heat map, didn't really impact in the forward line. And then on the bench, Mateus Philippou with the 69. It's somewhat of a what could have been score because he was on track to ton up. Look at his quarter splits, 25-23 at the start. Then the time on ground gods, aka Ross Lyon, ultimately killed him. 65% time on ground. You'd hope by now that he can start to play through more games, but a 69, you'll definitely take it. If he can put out more 60s, 70s scores, he should be able to get up to that 300 mark, which we will be happy with. Then Leo Lombard, a 49. It's an all right score. I think he's going to be a slow burn, but I think with a break even of 3, he's fine, I guess. You got Essendon coming up. Hopefully he can kick a couple goals there, but not that good, not that bad. And to round out the team with Lachlan McAndrew, an 83, a pretty stock standard score from him against Mark Pitney. He faces St Kilda next, who have the double ruck matchup. But then you have Brisbane, who I'm not sold if they're an easy or a hard matchup. Then you got Port, again, not sold. Then you got Richmond, who Nank might be back by then. But, you know, if he's averaging basically 88s, he'll get up to 430k, hopefully, and you'll very much take it at this score. And so that is how the team did this round. And now on to trades. And I think my trades are going to be pretty straightforward. So that is a script for another video I'm writing. Bring up, I'll do the trade-in ratings for now. And so my trade-ins for this week were Max Gawn, Cozzy Pickett, and Jacob Farrow. Jacob Farrow is getting an A+ because a ton from a rookie when you trade them in is amazing. Gawn is getting an A. Against Essendon, would have hoped he'd score a bit better than that. He did get a 131, which is a great score, and I should have taken it. But part of it is a bit of my stupidity. Part of it is a bit of it's against Essendon. They don't really have a ruckman. And then Cozzy Pickett, I'm tempted to give him an A, but I'll give him a B+. He was tagged, but his efficiency was poor. And so I will bring up my trade targets. And okay, Pickett is off, Gawn is off, Steen and Farrow are off. And then for the trade block, of course, English, Watkins are both out of my team. And for the trade targets, I'm going to add Christian Petrarca to this list because he should be coming back this round. And he's been an amazing scorer so far. And for the trade block, I'm going to add Jack Lukosius because if you look at his break even, it's 72, which is quite high. I was tempted to add Cook, but I think Cook has just got more cash to get. And ultimately, I think it's just better for me to get out Lukosius, not have any assets dropping in price. I'm not that confident in his role now. He just seems a bit of a fix-it man and could be playing wing, could be playing forward, could be playing halfback. You just don't know. And then for the rookies to bring in this week, there are only a few because Jordan Boyd at that 190k price point with a 50, you don't want to take it. Lockie Goldwyn was looking very promising after I think an 82, but he scored a 39, which you're not convinced with that, especially as someone on the outer of a Gold Coast Suns team that did quite poorly. He might get the chop, especially with Petrarca to come back in. Flynn Perez, however, I think as a Hawthorn fan, he looked pretty good in that game. And he plays wing, we have Massimo on one wing, and then we usually have Harry Morrison on the other wing, although Harry Morrison has always been a bit of a fringe player. And so if we get Flynn Perez to come in, play a good role on one of those wings, and score some good points, I think he'd be a very good cash generating option if he's named, of course, at that 99k price point. Then you have a player who's not on his bubble, Angus Anderson, who looked amazing in the Magpies team. He reminded me strongly of Milan Murdoch in his first couple games. And if we look at his splits, a 50-point third quarter, but he only got 3 in the last. And he was on track to turn up for the Pies, and I reckon he's a lock in that team now with that role. And after that performance. Then for the other rookies, you've got Thomas Edwards chugging along with a couple 50s, should be secure in that team, but jury's still out, I reckon. Josh Dolan, at that elevated price point, you don't really want to go there. Liam Fawcett, meh. James Borrelais, meh. So I think if we bring up the trade targets board, I'm going to add Flynn Perez, and I'm going to add Angus Anderson. But Anderson, I think, is one I'm going to be looking to get in next round, just because of what happened last time. I went early in a rookie year with Milan Murdoch, and he got injured. I think Perez should be a very fine rookie. Of course, if he doesn't get named, I might switch to Anderson. But I think for now, it's going to be Connor Buderick and Jack Lukosius out. I'm going to move Took Miller and Kozzy Pickett down. And I'm going to get, of course, Sarong can come down. I'll get Flynn Perez. And then I'm pretty much in a unique position where I can get anyone, basically. Anyone except for Bailey Smith, which at that price point, I'm not sure. But I'm leaning towards Christian Petrarca because, of course, he's forward eligible. He's been averaging 136, even with an injury-interrupted game in here, against pretty good opponents as well. He's got Essendon coming up. He's got Giants at People's First. Then he's got Saints and Port at Darwin. I just think Christian Petrarca is 100% going to be top 2 in the forward line alongside Harry Sheezel. And he's someone you pretty much have to have. I could get a Heaney, because if you want to get a Heaney, this is pretty much the last week. Because if he gets 123 against the Giants, he's going to go up in price by basically 45k. However, the run scares me a little bit. Of course, the Dogs don't have their ruckman, but they're still a formidable midfield force. Giants have Toby Bedford, who's back, and he's looking pretty good. So you can cop a tag here. Melbourne might be a bit of an easier matchup, but you never know with them. They're a wild card team. North Melbourne, if Finn O'Sullivan's back, might cop a tag there. Collingwood, not sure. Geelong is going to cop a tag. He could score really well in all these games, but just with all that tag risk, I think Petrarca, of course, he's someone who could get tagged, but I don't know. I think hopefully Noah Anderson, Petrarca, and Miller all do good enough that if one is tagged, the other makes up for it. But I think just going back to it, Christian Petrarca is a must-have, in my opinion. And if I make those trades, it leaves me with a pretty formidable forward line. If you look at it, you move, say, Philippou up, and then you chuck him on the bench for Tom Myers, and you move Petrarca on field. I like the look of this forward line. You got Harry Sheezel, Christian Petrarca, Took Miller. Hopefully, he could score a bit better. Kozzy Pickett, Sam Flanders, and then I can move Cook up there. Maybe swing likes of a grill down, and I can run a loop between Cook and Lombard. You'd assume Cook scores better. Then in the back line, move the Dogs boys on field because Lockie Jakes, he was managed, should be back this round. It's light in the defense, but all these rookies are class. Then in the midfield, you've basically got 5 deep because Bruin's pretty much a primo at this point. Then you've got Sarong Blamires. Could move Milan Murdoch there if he's named. I think, especially at the home ground in the derby, I reckon if he's back and if he's fully fit, he could go big this game. It's a big game. He thrives in those big game moments. But I think if we optimize it, I've got a projected score of 2,339, and that's with Petrarca off. Swap this around, you should add pretty much 50 to that. So that's pretty much 2,400. And of course, that is with a max gone 185 projected. Is he going to get that? Probably not, but one can hope. And so this is my team going into round 6. I think VCs, I'm not sure, because ultimately Bont's probably going to get tagged, and I don't trust Bont with the captain armband anymore. Could go could go a Gold Coast player against Essendon. Maybe a Noah Anderson if he can bounce back, but I really don't trust him. Could be a track. Hawks against Hawks against Port don't really have anyone there. Neither in this game. Harry Sheasel against Richmond could be one, but I do want to have the C on Gawn. Could go C on Gawn or BC on Gawn, C on Jackson, but I don't know. I just think I want to have a chance on Gawn. And so I think Christian Petrarca for me right now will probably be the way to go. Could go a Nick Dacos if he's back, but I don't know. I'm not really that confident in him. So this, I think, will be the team. But yeah, could go either way between Track and Sheasel. And now let's have a look at how the top teams of the round did, because there were some pretty high scores. Because, of course, you got people who have Max Gawn. Not sure why you would VC Sam Walsh, but fair enough. You got Naz, Archie Roberts, Heaney. A massive, massive score from Heaney. I was pulling out my hair that game because he is someone I could have gotten over Took Miller way back when. And if I did, I would have gotten a lot more points. Butters with a 145, Rochelle with a 127. All these are pretty good scores. Look back here. I think pretty much everyone. I was going to say everyone who would have Isaac Heaney. This guy doesn't, but he has Parrish. Parrish scores a 137. Very frustrating own. Very, very frustrating as someone who owned him and traded him out. Baz with a 151. Had a lot of the Geelong boys. This guy had Heaney captained, which is massive, massive. But yeah, there were a lot of massive scores this round. If we go to total points, of course, this guy Heaney, Holmes, Butters, of course, Gawn. Everyone up in this ranks has a Gawn. But Tom Stewart was a player who got injured and he didn't do quite well. There are a lot of backline players who dropped stinkers. And I'll just have a quick look at them because a lot of them might be on the chopping block. You got Josh Worrell, or Josh Dacos, firstly, with a poor score, along with Jack Sinclair, but you're not really worried about any of these two. Josh Worrell with a 68, a very, very poor score. Tom Stewart with a 47, equally poor. Jaden Short, this is why you don't pick him, because he'll drop a 60. Caleb Daniel, not really sure if anyone had him. Dane Zorko, bad score, injured and suspended. He's one to trade out if you have him. And then Dan Houston, the spud. Very glad I got rid of him when I did. And then Joe Fonte as well, a pretty poor score, starting to drop in cash. Glad I didn't get him. But I think all of those guys, I think, will be possible trade outs. I think also Ed Richards got injured. Might be one you want to look at. But with that, if you like the video, this will probably pretty much cap it off. If you like the video, feel free to like and subscribe. I'll post my updated trades on Thursday, basically dependent on the team sheets and everything. And so click the bell icon when you subscribe if you don't want to miss that. And with that, I will see you in the next one. Happy coaching.